He slapped me across the face in front of every single person I loved. What happened in the next 90 seconds, I need you to understand, was not what anyone in that ballroom expected. The first person to move was not my husband. It was a 6'4", 260-pound security bouncer named Dree, who had been standing 12 feet away and watched the whole thing happen in real time. Dree hit Marcus so hard the man left his feet. I am not exaggerating, both feet off the floor. The room exploded, screaming, chairs scraping. Someone knocked a full champagne tower off a table and it went down like a waterfall of broken glass across the marble floor. Women grabbing each other, men standing up not knowing whether to move toward it or away from it. 250 people in formal wear and absolute chaos, and Marcus, flat on his back on the floor of my ballroom with blood on his mouth, staring up at the ceiling. And then, silence. Not because the noise stopped all at once, because something moved through that room that was louder than all the noise combined. My husband walked out of the crowd, no rush, no expression on his face that I had ever seen before. He crossed the ballroom floor and stood over his own brother, his own blood, and looked down at him. And in a room that had gone so quiet you could hear the champagne still dripping off the edge of the table, he said one sentence. One sentence. And Marcus did not say a single word back. By the time you hear that sentence, and I promise you, you will hear it, you will understand that some men spend their whole lives performing power, and some men simply have it. Stay right here, because this story is only just beginning. Before we go any further, drop your location in the comments right now. Your city, your country, what time it is where you are. I read every single one. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit that button and turn on notifications. Now, let's get into it. My name is Serena. I am 31 years old. I grew up in Savannah, Georgia, in a house that smelled like magnolia and old wood and my grandmother's red velvet cake on Sundays. I am the kind of woman who remembers the small details, the weight of a conversation, the exact moment a room changes temperature. It is a gift and sometimes it is a curse. Because it means I noticed every single thing Marcus did to me, and I stayed anyway. For 3 years I stayed. Marcus Cole was charming the way a trap is beautiful before it closes. He was tall, easy laughing, the kind of man who remembered your coffee order and your mother's birthday and made you feel seen in the very beginning, like you were the only clear thing in a blurry world. We met at a fundraising gala in downtown Atlanta. I was working as a luxury venue director at the Hargrove House, one of the most prestigious event spaces in the city. He came with business associates. He stayed 2 hours longer than anyone else. He came back alone the next day with a single white rose and a question that felt like an invitation. Do you ever stop working long enough to enjoy the things you build for other people? I laughed. I said no. He said, I'd like to change that. And for about 4 months he did. What I did not understand then, what takes most women far too long to see, is that charm in the beginning is not a gift. It is currency. It is being spent deliberately to purchase something. In Marcus's case, what he was purchasing was control. It started with opinions, small ones, gentle ones wrapped in care. That color is a little much for your complexion, don't you think? Then, you don't really need to go back to school, you're already doing well, why stress yourself? Then, I just think Donna isn't a great influence on you, she's always stirring something up. Each sentence alone was nothing. Together, over 18 months, they were a wall built around me so slowly I thought the enclosure was my own idea. I stopped applying for the regional director position. I stopped calling Donna. I started checking his expression before I spoke in groups, reading his face for permission the way you read weather before deciding whether to carry an umbrella. The worst part, I was good at it. I adapted so completely that I genuinely believed I had chosen all of it freely. Then one Tuesday evening in February, I found the messages. I was not snooping. His phone had buzzed on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower, and the name that appeared, Brianna, 3 heart emojis, was the name of my coworker, my friend, the woman who had stood in my kitchen 6 months earlier telling me how lucky I was to have a man like Marcus. I read 17 months of messages in 24 minutes. I did not scream, I did not cry. I went very, very still, the way a house goes still right before a storm makes landfall. Then I packed a bag, left his key on the counter, and walked out of that apartment and that relationship without a single word. I want to be clear about what the next 14 months looked like, because this part matters. I did not fall apart. I also did not heal the way people describe healing in movies, some dramatic morning where you wake up and the light hits different and you suddenly love yourself again. It was slower and quieter than that. It was therapy every Thursday. It was rebuilding my friendship with Donna, one honest conversation at a time. It was applying for the regional director position, getting it, and standing in my new office for 5 full minutes just breathing. It was small, it was real, it was mine. What I was not expecting was Eli. Elias Cole walked into the Hargrove house on a Wednesday morning in April to book a private corporate dinner for 30 guests. He was reserved in a way that read immediately as intentional, not shy, not cold, but deeply deliberate, like a man who had decided a long time ago that words were worth spending carefully. He wore no watch. He shook hands with my assistant before he shook hands with me. When I walked him through the venue, he asked questions about the staff, their names, how long they had worked there, whether they were treated well. Not in a performative way. In the way of someone who had thought seriously about what it meant to be in a position of power over other people. I did not connect the last name. Cole is not an uncommon name in Atlanta. I had no reason to. Our working relationship grew into something else the way genuine things do, without announcement. An event planning session that ran 2 hours longer than necessary, because neither of us wanted to stop talking. A dinner that was never technically scheduled but happened anyway. Long calls on weekday evenings where the conversation moved from logistics to laughter to the kind of honesty that is only possible when two people have both been through enough to stop performing. He told me about his business on our third real conversation. Real estate development and acquisitions across the Southeast, a holdings company with interests in hospitality, construction, and private investment. He told me about growing up in Augusta with a single mother who worked double shifts and a brother he had practically raised himself from the time he was 16 and the brother was 12. He did not say the brother's name that night. I did not ask. If you are still with me, drop your city in the comments right now. Because I promise you this is about to get so much heavier. The night Eli told me about Marcus, we were sitting on the back porch of his home outside Decatur, Georgia, late September. Warm enough to sit outside, the kind of night that smells like the end of summer, holding on with both hands. He had been quiet for longer than usual. I had learned to read his silences by then. There was the thinking quiet, the tired quiet, and the carrying something quiet. That night, it was the third one. I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond. Okay. Marcus Cole is my brother. The porch did not tilt, the air did not change, but something deep inside my chest went completely, utterly still. He told me everything. He had known about Marcus and me from early in our relationship. Marcus had mentioned me at a family dinner, a passing reference to a woman he was seeing who worked in events. Eli had no reason to think more of it. They were not close in the way brothers sometimes grow apart, too different in temperament, complicated history between them, but they were still family. When Marcus and I ended, Eli did not know the details. Marcus had said only that it hadn't worked out. When Eli met me at the Hargrove house, truly met me, not as Marcus's ex but as myself, he had not recognized my name immediately. It was a mutual contact who mentioned it weeks later, casually, not knowing the weight of what they were dropping. By that point, Eli told me he was already falling for me. I should have told you sooner. He looked out at the dark yard. I keep telling myself I was waiting for the right moment, but the truth is I was scared you would leave, scared that Marcus would always be standing between us even from a distance. Did Marcus know? He does now. The temperature of the evening shifted. How did he take it? Eli looked at me then, and what I saw in his face was the answer before the words arrived. That's what I'm most worried about. What followed over the next 4 months was something I did not have a word for until much later. I would eventually call it an obsession campaign. Marcus began appearing. Not dramatically, not with confrontation, not yet, just there. At the coffee shop 2 blocks from my office on a Tuesday morning when he lived 40 minutes away. At the parking garage of a restaurant where Eli and I had dinner, standing beside his car as we walked past, meeting my eyes with a smile that had no warmth anywhere inside it. At the gym I had been attending for 2 years, suddenly a new member. Always in my peripheral vision, never approaching, just watching. I told Eli. His jaw tightened in the particular way it did when he was processing something he did not want to be true. He won't do anything. But his voice had a question inside it. Marcus began calling my phone from different numbers, not speaking when I answered, just breathing, then disconnecting. I documented every call. I filed a report. The officer who took it was kind but honest. Without direct threat, there was limited action available. Then the messages started. The first one came through Instagram, a screenshot of a photo Eli and I had taken together at a private event. A photo I had never posted publicly, with one line beneath it. "You have no idea who you're sleeping next to." I screenshot it, I sent it to Eli, I sent it to my attorney, then I sat down at my kitchen table and thought very carefully about the woman I had spent 14 months rebuilding, the woman who had walked out of Marcus's apartment without a word and built herself back piece by piece. I was not going to shrink again, not for him, not for anyone. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a heart in the comments right now. You are not alone, and keep watching because this is the part where everything starts to change. Eli proposed in October, not at a restaurant, not with an audience. We were driving back from a weekend in the North Georgia mountains, windows down, some old soul music playing low on the radio, and he pulled off onto a gravel overlook above a valley full of autumn trees burning orange and gold below us. He had the ring in the center console. He had apparently been carrying it for 3 weeks. I know my family history makes this complicated. I know who I came from and I know what he did to you. I'm not asking you to forget any of that. I'm asking you to build something true with me anyway, and I promise you every single day I will be worth that choice. I said yes before he finished. 2 weeks later, Marcus showed up at the Hargrove house. He walked in during setup for a client event, bypassing reception, and found me in the East ballroom reviewing linen arrangements. He looked at my left hand first, then at my face. Something traveled across his expression that I had no category for, not grief, not anger, something older and rower than either of those things. "You're actually marrying him. Marcus, you need to leave. He's my brother, Serena." His voice cracked slightly on the word, and for one involuntary second I felt the echo of the person I had once believed he was. Then I remembered the 17 months of messages, the breathing phone calls, the screenshot. I know exactly who he is. Leave or I call security. He left, but before he reached the door, he turned back and said something I would replay for weeks afterward. "You think you know what kind of man he is, you don't know what he's capable of." "I do, we grew up the same." I called security anyway. I called my attorney, and that night I told Eli everything word for word. Eli was quiet for a very long time, then he said something I have never forgot. He said we grew up the same. He's right that we grew up the same. What he's never understood is that we made different choices. The wedding was set for late March at the Hargrove house. My venue, my territory, 250 guests, a ceremony in the garden and a reception in the grand ballroom that I had personally coordinated down to the last candlestick. In the weeks leading up to it, Marcus's behavior escalated in ways that no longer fit the category of unsettling and moved firmly into frightening. He created fake social media profiles using photographs of Eli and sent them to my vendors claiming the wedding was canceled. 2 florists and a caterer called me in the same week asking for confirmation. He contacted a former colleague of mine and told her I had fabricated my credentials to get the regional director position. He contacted Eli's business partner and told him Eli had been under federal investigation. He had not been, but the rumor, circulating in the right business circles at the wrong time, cost Eli a significant deal. Eli handled it with a quiet that I was beginning to understand was not calm. It was discipline. It was the practiced stillness of a man who had learned a long time ago that reacting to Marcus was exactly what Marcus wanted. He's trying to burn everything around us, so that we're standing in the ashes wondering if any of it was worth it. Is it? Serena, there is nothing he can do that makes what we have not worth it, nothing. What I did not know, what Eli had not yet told me, was that he had quietly retained a private investigator 6 weeks earlier. Her name was Patricia. She was 53, former law enforcement, and had the energy of a woman who had seen every flavor of human behavior and was surprised by precisely none of it. Over 4 weeks, Patricia documented Marcus following my car on 3 separate occasions. She photographed him outside my gym and my office building. She obtained records of the fake profiles traced through IP addresses to his home network. And she found something Eli had not expected. Marcus had been feeding fabricated stories about Eli to a local Atlanta journalist, framing himself as a whistleblower. The journalist had spent 3 weeks trying to verify the claims. She found nothing that held. She did not run the story, but she kept every communication. When Eli saw Patricia's full report, he read it twice without speaking. Then he called his attorney, then he called Patricia back and said 4 words. "Give me 1 week." I did not know any of this on my wedding morning. Still here, drop a fire emoji in the comments. We are almost at the moment. The morning of the wedding was one of those early spring Georgia mornings that feels like the world exhaling after a long winter. The gardens at Hargrove House were in full early bloom. My bridesmaids were eating fruit and laughing too loudly in the bridal suite. My mother was trying not to cry and failing completely. I stood at the window in my dress, ivory silk, simple lines, a neckline that had taken 3 fittings to get exactly right, and I watched guests arriving below in the garden. I felt something I had not allowed myself to feel in so long. It almost startled me when it arrived. Safe, I felt completely, genuinely safe. My phone buzzed, a message from Camille, Eli's head of security, a quiet and formidable woman who had worked alongside him for 7 years. The message said simply, "Marcus is in the building, we are aware, stay in the suite." I read it twice, then I put my phone face down and went back to my bridesmaids and my fruit and my crying mother. If Marcus thought he could steal this morning from me, he had not been paying attention to who I had become. The ceremony was everything. Standing in that garden with late morning light coming through the oak trees, saying words that I meant in every possible direction, watching Eli's face as I walked toward him, that quiet, steady face that I had learned to read like weather, and on that morning it was only full sun. The reception moved inside to the grand ballroom. Music, champagne, the beautiful ordered chaos of a room full of people genuinely happy to be together. I was standing near the bar in a cluster of family friends, laughing at a story my aunt was telling. The music was warm and the room was golden, and I felt, for the first time in years, exactly where I was supposed to be. Then I felt the shift in the room before I identified the cause. A pocket of quiet spreading outward from somewhere to my left, heads turning slowly, the way they do when something is wrong but no one wants to be the first to react. And then Marcus was beside me. He smelled like bourbon and 3 days of bad decisions. His eyes moved over my dress, over the room, over the flowers I had chosen and the life I had built in the venue I had run for 6 years. His face assembled the expression I remembered from 100 private moments, the one that said, "You are not allowed to be more than I decided." Look at all this, 3 years, Serena, 3 years, and you just moved right along to my own brother. Marcus, you need to leave right now. He told you things about me, didn't he? Made himself look like the good one, like the stable one. His voice was getting louder. Guests nearby had stopped pretending not to hear. We are exactly the same person. You traded one for the other and you don't even know it. We are done talking, please. His hand came across my face. The sound traveled to every corner of the ballroom, clear and flat and devastating, a sound that had no business being in that room on that night. The room stopped. My hand went to my cheek, my champagne glass hit the floor, the music cut mid-note. And before the echo of that slap had even finished bouncing off the walls, Andre Washington was 6 feet 4 inches tall and weighed 260 pounds of solid Georgia Ray's consequence. He had been standing 12 feet away with his arms behind his back and his eyes on me for the last 40 minutes, as Camille had instructed him to be. He had watched Marcus's approach. He had watched the entire thing unfold in real time and had been waiting professionally, patiently, for the line to be crossed. Marcus had just crossed it. Dree covered 12 feet in approximately 2 seconds. He did not grab, he did not warn. His right hand connected with Marcus's jaw with the full force of a man built like a defensive end who had also, it turned out, trained in mixed martial arts for 11 years. Marcus left the floor, both feet clean off the marble. He came down hard against a high-top cocktail table which went over sideways, sending glasses and a full ice bucket crashing across the floor. He hit the ground and did not immediately get up. The ballroom detonated. 250 people erupted simultaneously, screaming, chairs scraping back. A woman near the dance floor screamed so loud it cut through everything else. Someone went for the door. Someone else went the wrong direction and walked straight into a server carrying a tray of champagne flutes, and the whole thing went down in a cascade of breaking glass that sounded like a small car accident. Men who had been standing quietly in tuxedos 2 seconds ago were now grabbing their partners and moving back from the perimeter of chaos without knowing exactly where the center of it was. Dree stood over Marcus, completely still, not even breathing hard, his expression unchanged. A mountain that had done what mountains do when something collides with them. Marcus was on the floor with blood on his lip and the specific look of a man whose entire concept of how this evening was going to unfold had just been revised completely and violently. He started to get up. Dree put one hand on his chest and pushed him back down with the casual ease of someone adjusting a piece of furniture. "Stay down." And then the room went quiet. Not because the chaos ended, because something else entered it. My husband walked out of the crowd. Eli moved through that room the way weather moves through a valley, not around things, just through them, everything simply yielding to his presence without contact. His face was something I had never seen before and have only seen once since. Every degree of warmth and softness he carried with me every single day, completely, utterly gone. What was underneath it was something ancient and absolute. He crossed the ballroom floor. He passed Dree without a word. He stopped directly above his brother, who was still on the marble with blood on his mouth, and the remains of whatever confidence had walked him through those doors tonight scattered all around him like the broken glass from the champagne tower. The entire room held its breath. Eli looked down at Marcus for a long moment, long enough for his brother to understand fully, finally, with no remaining room for interpretation, exactly what he was looking at. Then he said it. One sentence, quiet enough that the guests closest had to strain to hear it, loud enough that it somehow reached every corner of that room. "The next time you raise your hand to anyone in this room, it will be the last decision you ever make freely." Marcus said nothing. Eli straightened, he looked at Camille, one nod. Dree lifted Marcus off the floor by the collar of his blazer the way you lift a bag of groceries, without strain, without ceremony, and walked him to the exit with two other security team members flanking the path. The doors closed. Eli turned back to me, he crossed the distance between us. He looked at my cheek at the mark, and his face did something I had never seen it do. It broke, just for a moment, just enough for me to see what was underneath all that control, then it came back together and he lifted his hand and touched my face so carefully I barely felt it. "Are you hurt?" I looked at the room, 250 people, my ballroom, my flowers, my wedding night. "Ask me again during the first dance." The corner of his mouth moved, almost a smile. He held out his hand. I took it. The music resumed within 30 seconds, and I walked with my husband to the center of the floor while the room slowly, disbelievingly, magnificently came back to life around us. If your jaw just hit the floor, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. There is a new story every single week on this channel, and you do not want to miss one. Marcus was arrested at the venue entrance before he reached the parking lot. The assault charge was immediate, but it was what Patricia's report revealed next that truly dismantled him. His employer, a mid-level financial consulting firm in Buckhead, was unaware that Marcus had spent the last 8 months using their internal systems and client contact lists to run his harassment campaign. The fake profiles had been created partially through a company device. When the forensic review came back, it also revealed he had been misrepresenting client billing, a completely separate legal matter that the firm moved swiftly to address. He was terminated, he was charged, he had no audience left to perform for. Eli's business partner, once the full investigation was shared with him, retracted his concerns and reinstated the deal Marcus had sabotaged. The journalist who had been fed the fabricated story published a brief piece about targeted harassment of public figures without naming anyone based on her documented experience. Its own kind of justice. Brianna, my former coworker and Marcus's companion through my relationship, sent me a message 3 weeks after the wedding. Short. No decoration, just, "I'm sorry, I knew what he was doing to you and I told myself it wasn't my business. It was, I'm sorry." I did not respond immediately, I did not forgive immediately, but I kept the message. Some truths need to be received even when you are not ready to answer them. The hardest conversation came 6 weeks after the wedding. Eli and I were in the kitchen on a Sunday morning. He was making eggs, I was sitting at the counter with coffee, and something had been sitting quietly between us that neither of us had fully addressed. "Do you grieve him?" He was quiet for a long moment. He turned the heat down on the pan. I grieved the version of him I kept hoping would show up. I've been grieving that version for about 20 years. What happened at the wedding was the last time I'll do it. I'm sorry that he's your brother, that this is what it cost you. He looked at me across the kitchen, this man who had watched his own brother try to dismantle our entire life and had chosen, clearly, finally, without hesitation, which side of that line he stood on. It didn't cost me, it clarified everything. 3 months later we took the trip we never got to take. 2 weeks in coastal Portugal, a small house outside Cascais with white walls and blue-painted window frames and the Atlantic rolling in below us every morning. The most peaceful place I had ever stood inside. On our last evening, sitting at a small table outside with dinner going cold and the sun going into the water, Eli said something I have thought about every day since. Who were you before Marcus? I sat with the question, really sat with it. Thought about 25-year-old Serena who applied for every position she wanted and called her friends whenever she felt like it and wore exactly what made her feel alive and took up exactly as much space as she needed without calculating the cost. I was loud, I was opinionated, I was really genuinely happy. She's back. Most of her. All of her. I've been watching her come back since the first Tuesday morning you argued with me about table centerpiece proportions for 20 straight minutes and were completely right. I laughed, a real laugh, a full one. Below us the Atlantic moved. Inside the small white house there was nothing that didn't belong to us. I want to say one more thing before we close this story, because I think it matters. Marcus told me at the wedding that he and Eli were exactly the same. That I had traded one brother for the other without knowing what I was getting. He was wrong, but I want to explain why, because it is not just about what they did, it is about what they chose. Eli and Marcus did grow up the same house, the same mother working double shifts, the same neighborhood with the same limited options. Eli did not have some advantage Marcus lacked, he did not have an easier path or a cleaner history. What he had was a decision made somewhere along the way that the people in his life were not tools to be managed, that the woman he loved was not a territory to be controlled. That is not a circumstance, that is a character, and character is a choice made 1,000 small times before it is ever tested by one large one. The day of our wedding, Dree stood in the gap, and then Eli stepped forward. And every day before it, in every small choice, in every honest conversation, in every moment he put my name first, he had already been choosing. That is what I know now that I did not know at 26, standing in a man's apartment reading 17 months of messages on a borrowed phone. Some men are safe, the safe ones don't announce it, they just keep choosing it quietly, consistently, every single day. This story is over, but if it reached you somewhere real, I want to know. Drop your location in the comments, your city, your country, what time it is where you are. Tell me if this story hit differently because you recognize something in it. Subscribe if you are not subscribed yet, turn on your notifications. Every week there is a new story on this channel, women who stayed too long and then left. Women who rebuilt, women who walked into their real lives after years of living someone else's version of them. You do not want to miss a single one. And if someone in your life needs to hear a story like this today, share it, right now, without overthinking it. I will see you in the next story.